Penn State still has an opportunity to land one of the best prospects overall in the class of 2025.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Penn State still has an opportunity to land one of the best overall prospects in the class of 2025. And the only 2027 commit for Penn State is ranked top 10 in the nation. And does Penn State need to watch out for Notre Dame with its in-state Pennsylvania recruiting? This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Brian Smith is back, the recruiting expert for the Locked On Podcast Network. Since it is a recruiting episode, let's talk about the leaders in job recruiting, LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Please leave a like on the episode and let us know your thoughts down in the comment section as Penn State is in still good standing with Ty Jackson. Brian, this is somebody that we talked about at length over the summer, but it was going to be tough to, get him back onto campus or at least fend off the other schools that are targeting him. Georgia, he's from the state of Florida, so Florida State, but I ultimately thought he was going to end up with the Bulldogs. However, his commitment's going to go all the way to December. He's going to make a decision in early December, but Penn State has him back on campus for the whiteout game against Washington in November. I mean, that's huge. So never say never here, but at least they have an opportunity, and Penn State is right in the thick of it.
This is a kid that doesn't go to camps, doesn't really talk to media much, but his junior film is excellent. Mm-hmm. He's a very fast linebacker, really fits what Penn State did over the last several years by running by offensive linemen with their speed in their front seven. He is that guy, and he's a thumper too. He will hit you. South Florida linebackers typically get a lot of recruiting acclaim anyway, but Alabama, Georgia, Florida State, Miami, when those kind of schools come calling, that pretty well tells you what you're going to get. So I'm not surprised Penn State or anybody else up north want him too.
Alabama is also in this conversation as well, and that's the group of schools that are really there for Jackson. Jackson's listed at 6'1", about 200 pounds, but you look at the recruiting service, especially On Three. On Three has him as the best linebacker and as a top 25 player in the nation. And again, this is a Florida area prospect. I know Penn State has had some success recruiting Florida prospects, but Ty Jackson is as good as it gets. And I still think Penn State has a need at linebacker. I know that we've talked about how they're recruiting players that can play defensive end or linebacker, but you can never have too many in this case, especially when you anticipate that a Kobe King is going to move on and Abdul Carter is going to move on. You had the situation before the season even started, Brian, where Penn State lost two players, one defensive end, one linebacker, because they were kicked out of the school. So Penn State absolutely would need Ty Jackson to join this class of 2025 if they can land his commitment.
This is a guy that can change your ranking, move Penn State closer to the top 10, probably be an early impact player. I think he's a 3-down linebacker, just needs to add a little weight, but he could also be your nickel linebacker, your jack of all trades. That's why he's so highly recruited. So Penn State has done a great job in the South, stealing a few kids every year. Maybe it's Ty Jackson this year that surprises and goes to play for the Nittany Lions.
And I think they have it set up perfectly. Get him there for the whiteout. I think that's a very winnable game against Washington. So you get him to see the atmosphere. It's going to be a little cooler. He is a Florida native, but I think the football atmosphere and seeing Penn State, I guess we're going to, quote me on this and look back at it later. But Penn State, I anticipate a win against that Washington team come the middle of November. So all things combined together should leave a really good impression on Ty Jackson. Now, he's not the only 2025 prospect that Penn State is still targeting. They absolutely need offensive linemen. And why Malachi Goodman comes back into the conversation is because he was recently interviewed by On3, and he was quoted as saying that he intends to make a decision very soon. And this conversation happened about, roughly 5 to 7 days ago, depending on when you listen and watch this podcast. But he said that he intends to make his decision before the season starts. Well, his first high school football game of the year is Friday, August 30th. meaning that he's going to make a decision relatively quickly here, probably in the next week. And he is down to what he says his final schools are Auburn, USC, and Penn State. Brian, you cover Auburn very closely. Have you heard anything as far as where Malachi Goodman is leaning, who has the best chance at landing his commitment, the 4-star tackle out of the state of New Jersey?
I haven't heard what's going on with Georgia, Alabama, like some of those schools that have recruited
the fringe ones. Okay, fair.
Yeah, but Auburn was the school I know that was still in with him. But in the last week or so, I have not heard his name. Nobody in the Auburn media has mentioned him to me, which is surprising. We talk recruiting all the time. That's not been a name.
Okay.
Doesn't mean there's no chance, no, because I know they really like him. Maybe they think he's going to Penn State or something. I'm not sure. But to my knowledge, Auburn is just in the mix. I haven't heard them like be the confirmed leader or anything.
Yeah, Malachi Goodman's out of the state of New Jersey, and that's something that we referred to the last time, is the fact that if Auburn is going to New Jersey, USC, I know they're in the Big Ten, I get that, so they got to recruit coast to coast. But again, these schools, the Georgias, Auburns, Alabamas, even though he says that his top 3 essentially are the schools that he's most interested in are Penn State, Auburn, and USC in no particular order. But the fact that all of these schools are recruiting him means that he's not just some, just your everyday prospect here.
Yeah, this is a kid that earned his moniker as a top recruit. Georgia's not recruiting the state of New Jersey just for fun or any other SEC school. This kid is over 300 pounds and can move. He can play guard or tackle. I think he's a guy that has Sunday ability if he figures it out, like so many linemen. Of course, that's to be determined, but physically you can't teach what Malachi has. I understand why he's been so coveted. Probably a hard decision for him too, because he got local schools and he got Deep South schools after. It's a pretty interesting opportunity.
In terms of the consensus, he's a top 150 player. He is a fringe top 10 offensive tackle. He's number 11 according to the consensus. But he would be, if he commits to Penn State at this point in time, based on the consensus rankings, he would be Penn State's best player in the class of 2025. Maybe Ty Jackson would change that down the road. But at this point in time, if he were to commit in a week to the Nittany Lions, he would be Penn State's best overall player in the class of 2025. So, of course, this is a must-get based on the versatility, but also the pedigree with the ranking.
Yeah, I'm surprised Penn State hasn't gotten a little bit better with the O-line. They've had a pretty good O-line for years, and then here lately maybe a little, but like there's playing time available. Their offensive line coach is a good recruiter. This would be a good way to end the recruiting cycle up front for them if they get a guy as good as Malachi.
Well, and we talked about that. If they bat 1,000 down the stretch of this recruiting cycle, they get a Ty Jackson, they get a Malachi Goodman, they're able to flip a Zahir Mathis away from Ohio State. You get I think if you get 2 out of those 3 players, this is firmly a top 15 class, and probably, depending on what recruiting site you look at, a fringe top 10 class as well.
Yeah, I think 10 to 12 is very plausible. I mean, Zahir, just as an example, the pass rusher out of Philly, that's a guy that Penn State and just about every other school in the country put their ears to the ground about what was going on with him very early. The length when you watch him play, that's just one example. If they get all 3 of the kids you just mentioned, Zach, I think you could logistically say, okay, they've done all the things they need to do to make this happen, going from 15th to 10, somewhere in that range. But it's at least in the conversation, like you said.
That would be quite the hot streak to finish the class of 2025 cycle. Now we'll look ahead to 2027. Kemon Spell, running back in the state of Pennsylvania, announced his commitment early, similar to Messiah Mickens, the way that he did it for 2026. But something else that those two have in common, they're one of the best running backs in the early rankings for their respective classes. We'll tell you more about what that means for Kemon Spell and Penn State's running back recruiting on the other side of this break. Today's show is brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC. Hey, Locked On Nittany Lion fans, I'm excited to share a game that I know you'll all love, and that's Ultimate College Football HC. You can step right into the role of being a head coach and leading your team to glory. Now, imagine coaching the Penn State Nittany Lions. From recruiting players to managing training camps and scholarships, every crucial decision is in your hands. But can you handle the pressure? What I love most about the game is the ability to call offensive plays during the games, which allows you to shape your season and your program's future. Ultimate College Football HC is free. It's ad-free and it's playable offline. So that's perfect for gaming on the go. As Locked On Nittany Lions listeners and viewers, they are giving you the opportunity to use promo code LOCKEDONCFB in the game store for a free boost to get you started. All you got to do to download the game is go to ultimate-cfb.com, or you can find it in the app stores. Again, that is Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Hey, football fans, fall is here, and that means one thing. College football is back. And to make sure you're ready, we've partnered with Home Field, the exclusive apparel sponsor of our show, to bring you their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. Home Field is the go-to for premium collegiate apparel crafted with comfort in mind and featuring vintage designs that'll make you the envy of your tailgate. And with over 180 schools to choose from, including your Penn State Nittany Lions, there's something for every fan. But here's the real MVP. It's the Home Field Platinum Football Box. This is your all-access pass to exclusive gear for the 24 season with 3 never-before-seen items for your school. Plus, VIPs get even more. You get a special hat, and you get a 2024 Platinum Pass for early access and discounts all season long. So don't wait. Head over to homefieldapparel.com. Again, that is homefieldapparel.com, and gear up today. Home Field, let's make this season unforgettable. Now, before we get back to the podcast, college football is back, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not too late to catch up before the season kicks off. Whether it's the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, you can get it all from Locked On's stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football podcast. Who has the chance to make the playoff? What teams will cause chaos in their new conferences after the realignment? Everything you need to know, all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. 2027 Penn State commit, the only one in the class of 2027, running back out of Pennsylvania, Kemon Spell. The initial 2027 rankings have been released by On3 and 24/7, and Spell, according to On3, is the number 1 running back in this class and a top 10 player in the nation. I mean, that is massive, and Penn State doing its diligence and making its evaluations that early for a player that obviously he's unknown, right? He's new to the game of high school football. He's at a smaller high school, and it's not like he's at a big 6A school, whether that's in Pennsylvania or anywhere in the country. He's at McKeesport High School. Not a lot of Division I prospects, future NFL players come out of that area left and right. So Penn State getting this commitment this early, again, like Messiah Mickens, to anchor your class. This is the face of your class, and now you can build around this foundation when that cycle eventually comes into focus.
This is wild because how many years in a row have they gotten a running back like early in the process? Seems like it's almost it's kind of weird. I mean, I get it. They run the ball. They're known for running backs, but good for them. Also keeping a kid home, also keeping not just a good player, but like after watching this young man's film, there's a reason that he's ranked high. I don't know if he's the best running back in his class or whatever, but he's certainly got to be among them. Powerful, strong, athletic, changes directions well, catches well. This kid's a national recruit for sure. And good luck to whoever has to tackle him during the next 3 years of high school football.
I mean, as a rising sophomore, Brian, he's listed at 5'10", 200 pounds. He is that all-around running back. Receiving ability, he's able to run through the gut, right? You can run up the middle, and you have to be, you as a linebacker or a safety meeting him in the gap. You got to be worried about taking that shoulder to the chest there. But he can also run to the outside. He can use his speed. He can be a one cut and go. You need that versatility. If you are going to be ranked like this right out of the gate, you have to be able to do a little bit of everything and do that little bit of everything very well.
Yeah, I think that it's ironic that you mentioned that he's like 200 pounds already. The way he runs, just watching his motion, that doesn't strike me as a kid that's 15 years old, maybe 16 now.
Right.
So I'm curious to see how big he will be in a year to 2 years going in like the senior season. This is going to be a kid that, barring something unforeseen, will be a college-ready player before he leaves high school. And he's approaching that now, like physically. I mean, you're going to get stronger and stuff, but I really like what we're talking about here as an all-around back. Again, today's game, it's great to have power like you mentioned, but catching the football and having outside speed, which he does, will help separate guys that are just good to great.
And that's what Penn State's been recruiting more. Nicholas Singleton has been a work in progress with his catching ability because he came from a high school that ran the football and then ran it again and then ran it again. They basically pitched it to him and let him do the work. And it worked for them at the time. But Nicholas Singleton has come further as a pass catcher. But what I'm glad you mentioned that, because the likes of a Quentin Martin, a Corey Smith for the class of 2024, Tyke Hayes and Jabri Wallace-Coleman for the class of 2025, all those running backs, what they have in common is the ability to be a bona fide threat as a receiver. They're utilized in the passing game effectively, and James Franklin has said that hey, Quentin Martin and Corey Smith, if we were in dire straits, we could use them as receivers hypothetically, because that's how versatile they are. And then again, Kemon Spell and Messiah Mickens for 27 and 26 respectively have those attributes as well.
That's something that you're seeing more and more of, just from being out on the recruiting trail for much of the year, talking to coaches. Guys that are 3-down players on each side of the ball are really important. For instance, the old days of a true thumper at middle linebacker is nice, but that's why more teams throw it on first down now. That guy's not covering guys like Kemon Spell. They're not. I mean, that's a complete disaster if he's in a one-on-one. The ball's placed right, you can strike up the band. That's touchdown. So you have to find ways to defend guys like him, whether he runs, whether he catches. And that's where it gets really hard. And that's why you see more teams go vertical out of a horizontal stretch like Tennessee runs. They want to get that linebacker in space where there's nowhere to hide. Spell, don't be surprised if Penn State ends up using him in the slot, because he's that same kind of guy. He's very athletic. You're not going to catch him very often, and staying in front of him in coverage probably won't be easy either.
If Andy Kotelnicki sticks around for that long, because again, we are talking about the class of 2027 for crying out loud, but I can only imagine the creative ways that Kotelnicki could get the likes of Spell involved in the offense with, again, his abilities as an all-around running back. But Brian, I just want to go back to the point to wrap up this segment about the fact that Penn State goes and gets its foundation, its anchor in the class early, somebody that is going to be able to attract fellow prospects. The players, again, I want to reemphasize, I know we've had this conversation probably over dozens of times, but Penn State and the coaching staff acknowledge that some of the best recruiting work is not done by them. It is done by the players that they get in the classes early.
That's something I've seen, not just with Penn State, but with other schools too. Here's an extra bonus. If you get an in-state kid, of course, Penn State recruits locally pretty well. Historically, Ohio, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, and of course the state of Pennsylvania. If you get one of the studs early, and these kids know each other. Like I met Messiah Mickens at a 7-on-7 tournament. I didn't even know who he was, and somebody said, "Yeah, Mickens is over there. I want to talk to him." And I'm like, meeting that kid, I can see why other people would want to be around. Number one, he's a nice guy, but like he's physically imposing. Like he's not a normal high school kid. You come and see that kid at Happy Valley, even if you hadn't met him before. That's attractive. If you can get a quarterback early, it's even better. But getting local guys like that is huge for Penn State. And it's how you get classes rolling very, very quickly.
Well, you mentioned the fact that Penn State traditionally has dominated the state. It's been a question mark in this class of 2025, as it's been a little bit hit or miss for some top prospects. They still have the opportunity to change that with Zahir Mathis. But looking out to, now we're going to go back from 27 to 26. I think Penn State needs to be worried about Notre Dame coming into the state of Pennsylvania for that class of 2026. I'll tell you why on the other side of this break. And today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. You got to download the Game Time app, because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. And Game Time is proud to announce its new feature called Game Time Picks. And that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. And if you look at Game Time right now, you can see tickets, for example, for Penn State versus Bowling Green, and they have them listed, the top deals. There's a super deal right now where you can find tickets that are $10 off. There's an amazing deal that has them listed for just $11. That's on the Game Time app right now for Penn State versus Bowling Green. Plus, Game Time also has an exclusive offer for Labor Day. It is 50% off Labor Day tickets for the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers. So you save 50% off on those tickets exclusively on Game Time, but you got to hurry because there's limited availability and supply. So get your tickets while they last. And they're also offering first-time users another deal. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and you use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Penn State should absolutely be on high alert for Notre Dame when it comes to in-state recruiting in Pennsylvania for the class of 2026. Recently, the On3 affiliate for Notre Dame put in a prediction for Tyler Merrill, who is the second best prospect in the state of Pennsylvania, and probably is going to finish around, definitely in the top 100 of overall prospects in the consensus, maybe even a top 50. He's an interior offensive lineman out of Cumberland Valley. That one was a little surprising to see that he's already projected to land at Notre Dame. And Brian, you're kind of hearing the same thing, that Notre Dame has a pretty good lead here in his recruitment to land the second best overall player in Pennsylvania.
He visited Notre Dame for their end of summer pool party, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yep.
And I knew they really liked him, and he was interested in Notre Dame. I heard it went well. Michigan and Penn State are the other schools, not really surprisingly, that have been involved with him for the longest time. I believe that both of those schools will remain there, whether he commits to Notre Dame or not anytime soon. And if he commits this early, I wouldn't put a lot of stock in it anyway. But that's a state that Notre Dame's always recruited well, and it's just not that far away. It's kind of a happy medium. So it's not surprising. Old school Penn State fans will remember Notre Dame's always went there. Even Joe Montana's from the state of Pennsylvania. So that is a very unique situation where Penn State tries to get probably 7 out of the top 10 kids, I think, realistically each year out of the state. But Ohio State's hit the Keystone State more lately, and Notre Dame kind of goes in and out. So does Michigan. And then now it's weird because you have Alabama and Georgia coming up too. It's a little more sporadic, but any of those schools can come in and get a great player.
Right. I guess the horizon of competition has certainly spread out, and that has to do with NIL, conference realignment, everything else. I mean, college football has been nationalized rather than regionalized. So to compare this to the, Joe Paterno days of recruiting and having to fend off your traditional regional schools, now you have those outside influences that you mentioned. Again, Auburn going up to, for an example, Malachi Goodman in New Jersey. I know that's not Pennsylvania here, but Notre Dame coming in and taking probably not only one in Tyler Merrill, but a second prospect that's in the top 5 as well, consensus, and that's Joey O'Brien, a safety at LaSalle here, at LaSalle High School in Pennsylvania.
That's a kid that Notre Dame is very high on. They think he might even have a chance to play corner. He's 6'3", 6'4". I'm not sure if that's going to work out there, but he's a good receiver. He can play safety, and he's definitely just a very athletic player. He'll figure it out no matter what school he goes to. He was also at their end of summer event, and I'd imagine Penn State and everybody else are going to be fighting Notre Dame for him. I would say Notre Dame's probably the leader there too.
So Notre Dame, at least at this point in time, I know it's August 2024, we're talking about 26 here, but Notre Dame might end up with 2 out of the top 5 players. Now, Penn State has has 2 of them at least in Kevin Brown and Messiah Mickens, the top in the top 3. They're number 1 and number 3 respectively in the state of Pennsylvania. But when you compare it to other years past, 25, 24, I don't know that Pennsylvania's group is that strong. So if you miss out on Tyler Merrill, if you miss out on Joey O'Brien, that's really a big deal because the prospects further down the list just aren't as good as it's been in other cycles.
It goes in weird spells, doesn't it? Like sometimes you're 12 deep in your state that you really want it. And then the next year you're 15, but there's a spot that you really need, and none of those guys are in your state. It is no rhyme or reason. That's recruiting, and you have to adjust. And sometimes the kid you really want just has a tie. He might have a grandfather that played for Michigan. Good luck. These are the things you have to find a way to overcome. It's part of football. Penn State's done it before, and they can probably do it again. So if they win this year and they keep their staff together, I would imagine they're still going to have a pretty good class. And it's safe to say they're going to get like 6 out of the top 10. The days of getting like 9 out of 10 in your home state, pretty much anywhere, is hard. And for those that don't know, like Alabama right now is not getting anybody in their home state, and they have a top 5 class. There's just no rhyme or reason. Get the best players you can. Hopefully they're at home, but if they're not, you got to adjust. Penn State is more than capable.
Well, definitely, I want to let the listeners and the viewers know to be aware of Notre Dame. So if and when it does happen where Tyler Merrill commits to the Fighting Irish and then eventually a Joey O'Brien, that yes, it's important, but we want to tell people about it now rather than surprise, Notre Dame out of nowhere. Just be aware that when the class of 2026 becomes again the focus, that this could happen for the state of Pennsylvania, for Penn State in the state of Pennsylvania here.
Absolutely. Like I said, you just don't know. You got to recruit kids to signing day now. And if you miss out on a couple of kids, you got to steal somebody else's. Penn State's been doing plenty of that. Texas, California, and Florida are states that I'm not familiar with Penn State getting kids. But here we are.
He is Brian Smith, the recruiting expert here at the Locked On Podcast Network. All of his links and platforms will be down in the description. Again, leave a like on this episode and let us know down in the comments your thoughts on Penn State recruiting as the football season is very close, Brian, and eager to get everything kicked off and underway. And I just appreciate all the time that you've donated to this show over the summer to go through all the recruiting news and analysis to get us to this point. So thank you for talking about all of the future here in the present.
I appreciate it. It's fun to talk some Penn State football.
As always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, you got to check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin's your host. I've been a guest on that show many times, and I know you'll enjoy it just as much as I do. Talking everything from NIL to conference realignment to the expanded college football playoff. College football is back, and Spencer is taking you through all of it. That's the Locked On College Football podcast, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.